when I realized it was autogynephilia and that basically this was a whole fetish, I was probably like 20. And I'd been
So
out of
you're
the
obviously
house
out
for a
or
while,
okay, yeah.
and
Okay,
living,
sorry.
living, with roommates and stuff, and working in, going to school part time or whatever, and meeting people, and you talk about these things, but like, there's like tons of propaganda about all this stuff out there. They've been documenting their whole thing, um, so that's when I started to realize that it was more of like a sexual thing, and then
Mm-hmm.
realizing maybe like in my mid 20s that this whole time that this like every aspect of this thing was actually sexual. It wasn't about relaxation. It was about arousal, and it was about keeping secrets and control, and yeah,
It's so
it
heavy.
took a long time to unpack, and then so like once I started getting like feelers out for it, I started like looking into it more, and I learned about what autogynephilia was, who Blanchard was,
Mm-hmm.
um, and and uh, and some of the other stuff, and so um, and then it just became like peak trans after like 2016 when this shit started really getting crazy, and I was
Mm-hmm.
working at a university, and this whole cis trans thing was everything on the university campus of you know everything. It was just people were putting their pronouns in on everything, and it was just like it was just blowing up, and so I got back into it, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember, and started reading more and more, and just the literature's out there. I think Sheila Jeffries reading her book last
Mm-hmm.
year was like Gender Hurts was like extremely important to see what my damage was,
Mm-hmm.
how it
Yeah.
affected me. I don't even know.
I
I don't
know.
even know what I didn't even know what I experienced, like what happened. And like then I realized I was like, oh yeah, you did experience like sexualized exhibitionism, like sexualized violence. That's you have to put a name on that stuff, and then you got to be like,
Yeah.
oh, expunge it, purge it, whatever. Commit to not doing it. Commit to like not treating people, you know, as like objects. That
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So, and
It sounds therapeutic in a way to,
yeah,
have a name to these things. And obviously, I'm sure it's horrifying. I've dealt with my own stuff slightly recently about my own childhood abandonment and all this stuff with my father. And,
mm,
I used to joke about daddy issues. And until I went to a therapist, we really, over a year, like uncovered stuff. And I realized how deeply, because I always make jokes about it. I'm like, whatever. I see really amazing dads in movies, and I'm like, that's so Hollywood. Wow. And it's just a dad being a dad, hugging a child.
mm-hmm,
It was awful, and it's just crazy how I didn't have any other capacity to understand really that that's not how a father should be. A father should love you and ask you how you are and hug you and whatnot. But I didn't know that until I guess I just went to therapy and started talking about it and found an amazing therapist, and I realized how much it really did affect me really deeply and paint this picture, have this lens on of me and my life, and I fell into the victim role very easily, which is why I also have so much compassion for these people. They fall into this victimhood complex that is such a dead end. It's such a trap. It
mm-hmm.
really fucks up your distorted lens of the reality around you. I really can't emphasize that enough. I had one of my podcast episodes talking about that. It's just really not true. Like when you start being like, I'm a victim, and a lot of these things, a lot of people are victim of real things, really, truly,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't have to mold you and become you and distort your view about life. And it very easily that happens. It happened to me, and I think it's happened to a lot of people now because now we're praising victimhood and you're brave, or I don't even know. It's
Mm-hmm.
just Oh, it's so insane. It encourages like mental illnesses and going further into it, which
Oh,
I feel like the whole
absolutely.
mirror thing with your stepfather was really enforcing the delusion. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
I think those days were really solidifying it further. Not necessarily just that day, but the more time you spend with your delusion, especially on your own, without finding therapy or figuring out what this is, and maybe even having the capacity to realize this is deeply affecting other people. Like you had to live so many years of lying, and I'm sure your brothers and your mother as well, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if you could have a conversation now. I can't imagine having a conversation then because I'm sure it's stuff you realized later. But what was I going to say about that? I can't remember. Dang it. I don't remember. Crap.
When we were talking about dads and just like basically how have fathers do it. And like I got to admit that I was trauma bonded to this man for a while too.
Mm.
I went back and lived with him for a short time, um, maybe like a year, maybe 6 months to a year. After I left my graduated high school and was living on my own a little bit, I went to live with him for a little while. And but it was during a custody battle with my mom for the custody of my youngest brother. And so again, it was on the use train. I was being used as, as soon as I was like there, because he, extended all these invitations, come, blah, blah, blah. And then the ulterior motive was to, well, I'm fighting your mom for blah, 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 and this stuff. And it was like, he was just trying to use me and my experience against my mom. And he had nothing to say about, nothing good to say about my mom. And it was all of this just bad stuff. And honestly, I just realized then at that moment that this person is just a pathological narcissist and abusive, and it just, I didn't want to go ahead and like treat like all male autogynephiles like this. But when I see how they will act towards other people on the internet, I'm like, the same lack of compassion, same lack of empathy, the same attempt to dominate, the same attempt to threaten. I mean,
same thing.
Yeah, it's just a callback to all that stuff, and it just proves that a lot of these people are really, really fucked up in the head, and that they have decided that this is how they want to express it. And just the threats of violence and just the actual violence, and it's real, and so now they're in this big push to tell women to shut up about the violence and to lay back and take it. And it just infuriates. And I think I would think that most men like my age or, would think that's pretty infuriating. We'd like to think that we were like in my generation were like had some strides towards achieving equality, especially among the sexes and especially among like straights and gays, but all this stuff is being dismantled, and we're being painted in this bad faith as though we were like, actually, we did all this so that we could exclude a certain group of people from everything else. And that's just not true,
Yeah, if we rewrite history, say Jesus was gay. I mean, or not gay, I'm sorry, trans, Lord.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
Oh yeah, like everything. Joan of Arc and just all this.
Transing Joan of Arc. I saw that last night.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, I remember I was gonna say. It sounds, when you brought up like his specific style of garb, clothing that he picked. And you said his mother was an alcoholic, abusive woman. Yes. I've heard this before, where sometimes these AGPs will become the mother they never had.
Yes.
And I'm like, man, it's interesting that he chose that kind of clothing. I don't know what era that is. You know what I mean?
50s, 60s, yeah. It would be, because if he was born in 1950, that's the kind of stuff he's seeing on TV or whatever, and
exactly,
and that's would be some of the stuff.
A better version of maybe the mother that he didn't have, or the mothering that he wish he did have.
That explains actually a lot, and I've heard that mentioned before too. And I think in this case, it may have something to it, because clearly there is some questions about maternal love and affection and attachment there. And this is crazy. And I would love to know more about this, although I just don't think I could dig it up. But it would just be interesting because he has a twin brother.
Oh, wow.
And it'd be interesting to see what...
Seriously?
Yeah, yeah.
You've never contacted him? Did you ever know him?
No, but my youngest brother is in contact with him. So I think at some point I'm going to just see what's up with the twin brother. And
just have a conversation. I mean, So you never knew him or never talked to him?
I talked to his twin, but they were like, they were kind of like the oil and water. They didn't speak a lot when I was growing up, living in the household. Of course, dramatic dudes can have beef at the drop of a hat.
Well, I'm a twin, and people are like, oh, do you feel when she's in pain? I'm like, no, but I didn't feel like I got a lot of love from her. I feel bad because I don't think she'll ever listen. Maybe she will, but it wasn't very loving. I was very loving to her, and it wasn't ever reciprocated, and it was pretty hurtful. And I'm like, it was not a BFF twin thing. I mean, maybe when we were younger, but high school, it was like, I don't know her, and she hung out with the druggies, and I'm like, I don't do that shit. So I think, I mean, it's more, it's I think maybe it's more common, or I don't know, that twins don't get along. I'm the youngest, so she's like 34 minutes older than me, but I don't know.
That's so funny because we were talking about the youngest. It's like really the emergence from the
I
birth canal
know.
is like,
Well,
I'm
technically,
older than you. Like, really? Because we're kind of like been
well,
dating the same amount of time. You're just, they
I
pulled you
know.
up.
Well, I only say that because in this sense, I felt like I don't want to say she bullied me, but treated me like I was a younger sibling, kind of a thing. And I'm not trying to paint that she was a horrible person, but
No,
I
but
definitely didn't feel the. I don't know. The only time she told me, well, maybe not the only time, but I will never forget this. She was wasted. She's like, "Lindsay, I love you," and I was so mad. I was like, the only time you can show me love is when you're like out of it, incapacitated. Like that was so hurtful. I feel like this is weird talking about this on a
no,
podcast and
because
not going to her, but I like to tell these stories because I know there are other people out there that are being affected, maybe in the same way. So this isn't about framing my family in a bad way, but it's like people's narratives and stories about life and how fucked up they can be, and how personal it is for me to say that. I don't really want to hold back because I know this can affect someone, and it can affect them where they don't feel alone. And I think people's stories have the ability to absolutely change the world. That's why the stuff that you're talking about now. Have you had an instance where you've been able to talk about it? I'm sure maybe with your wife or whoever, but dissecting it in a way that I don't know. It's obviously super. It affects you. I'm assuming. I don't want to speak
well,
for you here.
yeah,
It's so tough.
it does. And I do talk with my wife about it. My wife is amazing. But every husband should be saying that. But I really like have found the soulmate in her, and she has listened to a lot of this stuff. She's extremely intelligent, and so she's able to reflect back, and she knows me, so she can be like, well, how much of this is you, and how much of this is what happened. So she's great at that. So I had a chance to talk with her about it because it
It's a huge part of your
affects
life.
and it affects how I see women, you know, and it affects how I see men, and it affects how
True.
I want to be as a father. And I am a father, so it does affect all that. So especially now when it's what's coming out, you know, and feminism is like, I live in a house and I live in a home with my mother-in-law, my wife, and my daughter. So I'm the only male here. I live in a feminine dominated household, basically. And feminism has basically permeated my household that I live in now. But it's also like, I'm like more radical feminist than like my wife or my mother-in-law, because I've just allowed myself to be like, you know, I don't give a fuck. These guys are really causing a lot of problems, and it's time to have some radical self-criticism. And as man, I'm not sure like a red pill or mal pill or anybody, but like as like a, you know, as like a commie or whatever, as a Marxist or anything, you were supposed to do some self-criticism, you know, and you're supposed to do a lot of self-criticism, and you're supposed to. So she helps me with my self-criticism in that regard because, you know, she's wise, and but so she's actually helped me a lot. But our relationship isn't really centered around like my childhood trauma, because both of us have had like our adult trauma, and we're just doing a really awesome job of handling that. We quit drinking like 3 years ago, and our lives have just been like so much better, like entwined and you know and healthier. I would just recommend anybody who's having struggles with their life, just evaluate your relationship with alcohol. Do that.
Yeah, so true.
Just evaluate it. Just evaluate it. It may be
Like
nothing.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like when you're talking about with your sister, like she was able to speak with, you know, your twin sister telling you love her only under the influence of alcohol. That is hurtful. And that's something that you're never going to forget, because it's so like, as we evaluate that kind of stuff and we evaluate our family life, and I have been able to talk about this with my wife. I have been able to talk about this with my mom, although my mom's still in the kind of like, you know, like my mom dealt with the brunt of the problem, so like she's still in like, she's more focused on how it affected her, and she might not have space for me to deal with that, to deal with my space for it, because I'm an intense kind of person, and but I've done a lot of reading on it and stuff, and like, you know, the last time I saw her a few weeks ago, and I was just telling her, I was breaking it all down for her, like the AGP, the narcissism, all of the comorbidities, the narcissism, the alcoholism, the, you know, the Catholicism. But so, and
Wait, he was Catholic? Okay,
yeah, he went to Catholic school. Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, and
Was he
Catholicism,
also
man.
in the military? Because there's also a crazy amount of
Uh-huh.
ex-military people that become AGPs, and I don't know
Hmm.
what that is about. There's definitely studies on that. It's called like Flight into Masculinity or something. It's a study about that. I can't
Huh.
remember, but I think they also mentioned, you know, having a mother, lack of mother, or overbearing mother that can, I guess, lead into AGPville. I don't know.
Mm.
I'm obviously paraphrasing poorly, but I mean, there are
But
studies about this from like the 90s, which is crazy. It's like, what? I don't know.
well, they've been doing the research for a long time, and that's why when these fools come up with like, it's not a fetish or whatever, and it's just this like innate gender identity of how I feel, wrong, wrong.
Yeah.
We already did the homework. It's it's
Yeah.
not like I wouldn't say it's 100% settled science, but at the same time, the science happened. I mean, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds and thousands of interviews, and and people reconstructing this data, and it's not hate to be like, look, we talked to these people
Exactly.
and asked them what they thought, and this is what they
Yeah.
told us. That's not hate. It's not hateful to use the things that they said to demonstrate the things that they're doing.
Yes. And to just have a conversation and research thing, that's not hateful. You
No.
know, silencing is helping no one. So he grew up Catholic?
Yeah, went to Catholic school. We were raised Catholic. I didn't go to Catholic school, but we were definitely raised Catholic. I played Jesus a couple times in the church play. Got some acting
Amazing.
chops. Yeah, Last Supper Jesus, my favorite. It's the cool. It's Last Supper Jesus. It was like, you know, he knew he was going out, and he was just trying to be the bigger man about it. And I'm not a big fan of Stations of the Cross Jesus because you're just getting your ass kicked the whole time. But
You're not a fan of what? What'd you say?
Stations of the Cross Jesus, Stations
What
of
does
the
that
Cross,
mean?
okay,
No,
so
I don't know. I don't know.
so
I don't know
so
much. I should know more.
Catholics like fetishize violence against Jesus, basically, right?
Oh my
I mean,
God.
they do. It's
Wow.
Jesus is suffering on the cross. And this is an atheist who was raised Catholic, but Jesus is suffering on the cross, and it's all like, oh, sure, he was on the cross, but up to the cross, I think there's like 14 stations of the cross when Jesus is first
Station.
tried, and they affix the crown of thorns, and then he falls for the first time, and
Okay.
then, so each one of these stations of the cross, and then when he finally, I think the final one is when he, it's like, Lord, why have thou forsaken me, or whatever. But it's like each of these stages of like, his falling down once is like, okay, then we got to pray about this thing, and it's like, oh, then he falls a second time, and the sword is thrust into his side, and all of these,
Moments. Yeah.
stations are like sort of like lifted up and like regarded as like a holy suffering, and so it's kind of fetishized, and they're worshipped in a way, and it's reenacted as a way. So
Interesting.
during Lent and stuff like that. So yeah, Stations of the Cross. It's a pretty wild.
What do you
But
mean?
I would say
I'm
that's
like,
what I mean by they
how is
fetishize the violence,
how is
because the
that?
suffering is like,
Yeah.
ooh.
How is that acted out in during Lent?
Okay, is it Lent?
I think I don't. I mean, I've heard of
Okay.
it. I think it's the month-long thing where you give up something that you love. Correct?
Hmm.
Is it a month or is it a
Yeah,
week?
it should be a
I think it's a
month, I
month.
believe, or yeah, a month. So
Ooh, I did.
Stations of the Cross, yeah, it's because because the Lent is his resurrection, correct? I cannot. It's been so long. Okay. lapsed Catholic. You're talking to one, but anyways, yeah. So
Well, because
it
I don't know what
occurs.
Catholics. I don't
Mhm.
know. I'm like I don't even know if Christian. I don't know, dude.
Yeah,
It's too much to remember.
it's the dark Christianity. It's the men in robes. It's the men in dresses. It's the darkest Christianity. Let's be real, dude. It's you know what goes on in the Catholic Church. I mean, the lies, the
I don't want to
cover-ups.
assume. I don't know because I didn't grow up in the Catholic Church. I've only heard
Yeah,
stories, and I'm not gonna sit there and be like, oh, this is true. I mean, you're more than
pedophilia and
welcome to tell
cover-ups.
me.
Yeah, pedophilia and cover-ups. Placing kids on on a serving tray, and then moving the priest when he's had his fill, or when it gets too uncomfortable. So a lot. The Inquisition, the the enslavement of the Crusades and stuff like that. So the Catholic Church has such a dark history, and so yeah, it brings with it like all of this violence,
Wow.
and you're just immersed in it. So yeah. And your
Jeez.
tremendous guilt. Even the confession thing. Like, is
Oh
your
yeah.
do you guys mess with
I know.
confession?
My sect of Christian, no, like
Mm.
I never understood that. Like you're supposed to talk to God, Jesus, and confess your sins to in a prayer, like you and one on one. So I never understood going to some real person in a box
Hmm.
and like being very vulnerable to people that are human, and humans are have human error, and they're humans, and they can unintentionally slip up. And I'm just like, that doesn't belong to. You don't confess to some person. You confess to Jesus. Like I'm like, that's all of a sudden now Catholicism is you say it to someone else, like then goes to like I
Yeah,
don't subscribe to that personally, and I don't
it's weird.
subscribe to the all the praying to separate saints. Like I never
Hmm.
understood that either. I'm like, well, now you're. Doesn't the Bible say no other like false gods or whatever before? I'm like, well, now why are you individualizing praying to different saints? I'm like, that's I never understood that either. But
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about that, but yeah, we do we
doesn't make
they
sense.
do mess with the Saints a lot, and huh, yeah, yeah. There is. It's just such a strange like yeah, it's kind of like a mishmash, But yeah, it's just dark and
Did you experience any of that darkness, or you've just heard about it, like pedophilia or whatever, or any sort of messed up? Like, did you hear? Did it happen to you? Did it happen to your stepfather? Like,
I wouldn't know if it had happened to him. I know that they use corporal punishment all the time in Catholic school when he was growing up, like physical violence. So of course that like translates into like how they parent.
oh
Um,
God,
but like I don't use corporal punishment. I never.
what is that
Why?
again?
What are
Is
you
that
gonna do?
just physical violence with
Physical
someone who?
violence? Yeah, violence against the body. Spanking or whatever. Like
That does
it's
not
just
help.
if it worked, I'd be a perfect person.
It does. It's fucking opposite. It doesn't. What enforces the child to be fearful?
Hmm.
Like,
Oh yeah, you can
yeah,
catch it. Yeah, you can
spanking.
catch a beat down anytime. So yeah, but the confessional aspect of it
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
is really weird because yeah, you're right. You're vulnerable, and then not only are you like confessing to a man, right? Um, that man is
True.
then giving you penance, like, oh, you'll say this number of prayers for this thing and this number, and so
It's
like this guy
ridiculous.
is just like handing out Hail Marys, handing out Our Fathers, as though that were really going to absolve me of a crime. If I
Right.
punch my brother in anger or whatever, and then I confess that, I
Mm-hmm.
haven't, and then I say a litany of prayers.
Yeah.
I haven't
X
really
amount of
made
time.
amends. I've maybe made amends to
Exactly.
God, but what have I done for my
You're
brothers?
just
No, but yeah, he should
yeah,
be sitting out there like, go
exactly.
apologize to your
True.
brother and then say 10 Hail Marys or whatever.
Or you don't. I don't believe in like the repet. That sounds like just parroting what you're being told to do. And like, do you really feel that you shouldn't have to repeat something like over and? I mean, that's so weird. Like having a
Culty.
specific number. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
it's the
like I
culty, the
don't believe in that
mantra.
either.
Yeah, it's
Nah, it sounds overly complicated, and yeah, it's a good point. Like
it's
not
confusing.
factoring in the person that you affected. That doesn't sound like they did. I don't know.
No, they don't. It's about basically them achieving this thing where they're standing in for God. They're actually standing in place of
Yeah,
God, and they're the
exactly. And telling
they're a
you what to
man of
do. I'm
God.
like, yeah, that's like you're mimicking God. I mean, that's like blasphemous. I think right there. It's like the whole thing. This is a tangent, but I don't believe in tarot because tarot can be a situation where someone can dictate to you and manipulate you. Where they're like,
Hmm.
oh, and I've had literal stories of someone told me this thing that was a manipulation tactic, and I don't know. I just
Well,
I
because
think
it's
it's
right, because it's like up for interpretation, right? They're saying like if they
yeah,
do like a reading on you, and they're going to be like, well,
and
this means
it's
that. And,
not.
oh my gosh, you
Yep,
obviously have something in your life that's like weighing you
and that can
down
really
about.
affect you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you could
So
like
it's like,
it just sounds. I mean, it may not be true. It's like well, now you just suddenly you're vulnerable and susceptible to. You're opening yourself up to again that person's not God. Like, why are they telling you how you're supposed to live and whatever? Like, I mean, it's. I think it's a trap. I think it's a kind of a
it's what
gateway
they
thing,
call
like deception.
like induction, I think, for like in like cultic milieus or whatever, anything like that, where it's like
Yeah,
yeah,
emotionally
it's
swayed
like.
you.
Hmm. So yeah, so you're just kind of like swept along with this thing that's unfolding, and it's not necessarily you're not driving it after you turn over the reins to somebody else.
Exactly. Well said. Yes.
Wow.
Is there any other like angle we didn't discuss? I feel like
I was trying to think. We actually
I'm
hit
not
the
trying to wind
Catholicism
down
thing.
because I'm
Yeah.
like I feel like we're not even. I don't know. I'm like no,
Let's see.
must hear
Well,
everything.
I was kind of just like maybe if we just wanted to talk about like a little bit about where things are now.
Yeah, go for it.
with like me as like like revealed as a transphobe to like the artistic community I was part of, and
Oh
subject to like
God.
internet stalking and gang banging or gang stalking or whatever they call that. And basically, like I was contacted by once I was like, hey, like just saying that trans women are women is an ideological statement, and then they're going to leak my DMs, leak that I was a victim of child abuse,
Oh
sexualized
my
child abuse
God.
by a freaking AGP transvestite, and so they just
I'm
put
like,
all that
how
up
are they
there.
able
And
to even twist that? I'm just like, what
well,
evidence is that it's going to work for them?
well, what right
I
do they
guess
even
they
have to
obviously
comment
copy
on
or
that?
yeah,
What right
that
do they
doesn't
have to
make
say
any
like,
sense.
oh, we can talk about this? Like that's not their story. You don't
It's
have
just
the right
harassment.
to.
It's like leave
Mhm.
you alone. It's again they're practicing what they say. Don't do that. It's like, well, you are doing that. You are harassing and mentally just you're disrupting. Just like mind your own business and move on with your life. Okay, someone doesn't believe your cult ideology.
Mhm.
Move on. They spend so much time tearing down someone's psyche and spirit because it doesn't align with what they believe in. How is that kindness and niceness? It's vicious. It's literally a cult mentality. Scientology is the exact same thing. They
Mhm.
say go in and go in all the way, go in hard. I took notes on that with the Leah Remini
Oh,
documentary
fascinating stuff.
film,
I
which
love
is
Scientology watching.
dude. I don't know if you've watched it recently. I mean, I guess you've had the whole AGP experience where I watched this like not even a year ago, and the parallels with the trans cult is insane. It's the silencing, just the tactics that they participate in is the same shit. Like if
The
you
gang
say any,
stalking and the
yeah, going against or saying having an opinion, like you get cast out and they're psychos. They go after you. They don't leave you alone. They try to wreck you and break you.
hmm
And I see the exact same behavior with these umbrella people. Like
hmm
it's there's nothing what they say is like we're all about inclusivity and yay happiness and rainbows. Like they're vile. They're horrible, despicable, awful human beings that have true hatred in their heart. The shit that they say that we're hateful or phobic or whatever, it's like that's such a lie. All of it is the biggest lie. It's founded on a lie. It perpetuates and carries on and exists within a lie completely throughout all of it, all of it, all of it. I don't know what. I'm pretty sure I cut you off. Oh, where you are now.
Well, as far as like when you're talking about as like a cultic milieu, no, this is where we are now. We are at the place where like when you speak up about certain views, and even if they aren't hateful, they are immediately in bad faith cast as hateful. I was
Yep.
told that I had to remove myself from all of my posts that of my former band. They're like, you need to basically it was ordered to erase myself from a band I had left like a year ago. And I was like, dude, you guys have like all my music recorded on your albums and stuff. You're going to tell me that I need to like take myself off of of your album, or take myself off of any posts that have to do with
Oh
the
my
band and all
god,
that
how
stuff, and or
horrible.
go through my timeline and erase all references to you. It's not going to happen. Okay, you don't have that amount of control over me. And as a matter of fact, that you would even ask means that you are a terrible person, and that
That's awful. I'm
basically
so sorry that
you
happened.
can't
So
erase people.
did you leave the band before
hmm
like it wasn't
Yeah.
affiliated with the okay,
Mhm.
still
Yeah,
that's
but I was still in the artistic community of like playing with other musicians and stuff, and that's how this whole thing came about. And it was like it was thrust into the milieu from like me talking to some guys in a union on Facebook to being like all the artists I know going like, oh, this is such a bad look, this is so transphobic and all this stuff, and then leaking my DMs about like, hey man, if anybody's got a
oh my
right to
god.
be, and I'm not saying it could be me,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
and then they just get to poo-poo all the thing, and they get to poo-poo anybody else's experience. So shutting people down, telling them to be quiet, telling them it didn't happen, it's over. Sorry. It's over. We're
Oh my
breaking
god.
through this stuff, and the bubble is breaking, and that's why the intensity seems to have picked up. People are becoming more
Yes,
shrill. They
exactly.
want to fight some more, but see, they don't get out in the streets to like make change that will like protect people. They're out there to disrupt other people's
The
things
people
where they're
first,
like
yeah.
clamoring for their own spaces and stuff. So
Yeah. They're like the little
they're
minions working for big pharma, attacking people and making people conform to this,
they don't
where
even
they don't need
see
they
it.
don't need even to do much, propaganda, whatever, and then the people are the ones that are attacking others, being like, you must think this way, you must erase your history of any of this having opinions, like really. It's what it is. Like, if having an opinion is now hate speech. I live in reality. I live in biological reality. And if they want to call an opinion, the whole UK ruling that happened with Maya, that whole lawsuit thing got
Yeah.
excused or pardoned or whatever, where if you have, I hate it that it's framed this way because it's like, it's not an opinion, it's reality. But it's getting to a place where believing in reality and biological sex is immutable, that is an opinion, where that's now, I think, protected in the UK, which is amazing. It's definitely a small strides, but still. Where was I going with that? Well, that's in the sense that, if you say that about the AFL-CIO, I wrote it down because I don't know what that means, by the way. But
It's the union, a big like auto manufacturer. So I want to say laborers.
yeah. But what you said is like, well, is your opinion. You know what I mean? So like, well, so now you can't have opinions? Like, this is crazy. It's so authoritarian. Like, you must think this way. You can't think that way. And we also can't even have a conversation about it. You need to shut up. Like, that's what's happening.
Well, it seems
how are we
like
going to make any progression and learn from each other? And not that I'm saying that like living with trans people is like the way. I don't believe in it, but it's like, well, I don't think these people are going away anytime soon. We need to find a way where everyone can speak, and especially I don't think, how the fuck is that going to happen? As soon as you bring in the fact that I have feelings and this affects me in this way and that way, I've seen this happen where they go, we're just gonna have to agree to disagree. It's like, so you won't even take into consideration that I have feelings and that I exist? You're just like, no debate. And they don't debate because they know all it takes is a simple prick in their bubble to have it pop. It's not difficult to have this thing unravel before them. And I think they know that. That's why they're not having debates with anyone.
No
Because
debate.
It's like,
No debate is a
shit.
characteristic. Yeah, it's a characteristic of weakness. You don't have an argument. You literally cannot engage in a debate.
And all you can do is parrot what you're being told.
Exactly. And so like if you're ever presented with like the existence of somebody like me who was a victim of, these people, and it's not all rainbows and it's not all sunshine, and it is like having to leave the house early, and it is not being allowed to come home, and it is always being afraid of, being exposed, or it is always being manipulated into lying to other people. You don't have an argument. You can't tell me I'm wrong. You can't tell me that didn't happen to me. And you might want to say, oh, it doesn't happen to everybody, but that's fine. You can say it doesn't happen to everybody.
A little bit too real, so then they try to shut it down. It's like, ooh, that's too real. And they always move the goalpost. Like, you'll say that, or, things like that in conversations, and they don't want to address it, so they'll be like, well, trans suicide. I'm like, are we having a conversation or not? Why are you not addressing what I just said? You already are dismissing me. It's clear that you don't give a shit about me because you're not even listening to me. You won't even listen because it's the goalpost thing. They keep changing, I don't know if you experience this, but it happens all the time with these people where if you do happen to catch a conversation with them, they always then spout out. They don't take into consideration with what you said. They don't even mull it over. They just jump to the next, it's like 5 or 6 phrases that they always talk about. And they just spout that out to you. Like, it's like, no, we're not getting to that yet. You need to address what I just said, because if this is conversation that is a normal human conversation, I take into consideration your feelings, and you need to take into consideration my feelings. If you can't do that, we can't have a conversation. That's the basicness of having a conversation, I thought. And, I mean, I don't even think that is conversations they're having. It's just, they can't even think for themselves.
Well, if you're looking at, like, where this is coming out and like why it's so prevalent in our society, you got billionaires, pushing a propaganda for profit, right? So they're pushing
billionaire AGP men.
Exactly. That's why that Martine Rothblatt thing I saw last night from like '93 was like, oh, and it was about transgender liberation and stuff. Like, dude, you guys, transgender. Let's just put it this way, dude. Nobody, like, the word liberation, it has to do with a very specific state of being, right? Like, you are not free, you're enslaved, and you don't have liberty, right? So framing things in liberation terms really requires like a deeper discussion and like a very nuanced discussion, because there isn't such thing as unlimited freedom. There isn't such thing as unlimited liberty. Every liberty that exists on God's green earth has a limit. And so this idea where there's no limits, no boundaries, all that stuff is being pushed by people who are profiting off of like a transhumanist agenda, people who are profit, you know what I'm saying? And that was one of the things that got me yelled at too by the former bandmates. The idea that there was a sort of gender identity industrial complex or whatever, like basically like there was like, they were just denied a high heaven. Oh, what do you mean there's like a, it's like an industry, a gender industry. That's what it was. And they would deny to high heaven an industry. I'm like, dude, are hormones free? Is surgery free? Is training for surgery free? All the like, that's not free. There's an industry behind it. They have products to sell. Why is that? And so like, this is why I'm glad that I get to talk to you, because I know that you're like towards on the right side of the spectrum, even though I'm gesturing left with this. Okay.
And politics.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Does it feel like, I feel like some of the
I didn't know what you meant by that. I'm
okay.
like, what spectrum? Because it's a spectrum. Yeah. Yeah.
So like on the political spectrum, that you're going to be on the right side, right? And so we're like, I'm on the left side of the spectrum, right? And I'm glad that you're having me on, because we can talk about these things. Because right in between you and me and our positions on this place, there's a great mass of people who are extremely ignorant, who are violent, and they're angry, and they don't want to listen to what. So they, in their minds, they say like, you couldn't possibly agree with me. And I couldn't possibly agree with you. Like, you and I should not be having this conversation because we're so diametrically opposed.
This is about humans. Like, left and the right thing has nothing to do with it. Like,
it doesn't.
Nothing. I don't give a shit. That's what keeps us separate, if we can't have conversations and all you focus on is like the religious beliefs or their political beliefs or whatever. Like, even if they were trans, I wish I could have conversations with them, but they're it's infuriating. They're not there to have conversations. They're there to convince, I believe. And whatever, I've listened to debates where I'm just like, wow.
Well, why do you got to be so stupid about it? Like, why are their points so like ham-fisted and trans men are women? They've always been women.
Well, why are they men if you're saying trans? Like, you're literally giving it away there. No, they're not. Trans men are trans men. Which I don't even like saying that, because it's the word confiscation of language. It's just a deliberate language disruption to say trans girls should be allowed to play with girls in sports. I'm like,
they're being banned.
No. Yeah, I know, but it's like, well, they're using the word girl because half the people don't know what the hell trans is. A lot of people, and I had to like really like unfortunately learn this. I'm like, okay, trans woman means a man pretending to be a woman, because I hear woman and I'm like, oh, that must mean a woman who's pretending to be a man. So I had to be like, no, that's a man pretending to be a woman, because it's the word woman. So I had to literally like untrain my mind what woman is really, which is kind of terrible. To be like, wait, it's a man pretending to be a woman. And also trans man is not a man pretending to be a woman. It's a woman pretending to be a man. It's just like wild. Like, a lot of people don't know that. And people say like, a man taking first place on a cycling podium thing. The woman...
McKinnon.
No, well, that person is one of them. I always said she. He. Where the woman captioned it. I know. Such a male. Lord. But she captioned it like, she said trans man. And I'm like, people don't know what it means. It's just a deliberate language disruption, because when people that don't know what it is, even the people that do know what trans is, it confuses you, because you're like, what? Girls not being allowed to play with girls? That's crazy.
Yeah, you're using the same language.
It's very intentional. It's on purpose to confuse people, because people are going to get immediately passionate about it and be like, whoa, that's not fair. Let girls play with girls. And they'll start fighting for that. And again, it's the same thing where, like, imagine them halfway being like, oh, that's a boy. Well, shit, I've already bought into it. May as well keep it going. I mean, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's just so deliberate.
Just laziness. I mean, it's just laziness and kind of going along. And you were saying earlier, it's just cowardice. It's just cowardice, because basically what we have to do at the end of the day is go, okay, what are we really, really talking about? What are we really talking about?
Yes.
Are we talking about? We're talking about sex. And we're talking about the difference between the sexes. And people are like, I got in this freaking ridiculous argument with people who are like, they don't know what sexual dimorphism is. They think that sexual dimorphism is a cultural thing. They're like, this person commented to me, like, there is a greater difference, greater sexual dimorphism in other cultures than in Black and Asian cultures and in whites. So wait a second, you're saying there's a greater difference between male Asians and female Asians? And there's a greater difference between Black people who are males and Black people who are female? You know what I'm saying? Black men and women, they're saying like there's greater differences in the sexes.
Well, I just think this language...
You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the language... The distortion of language itself and what words mean is very apparent now. Like the whole hate speech thing. Hate speech is me saying, men don't belong in women's sports. Like, that's hate speech. telling teenage boys to get out of the women's bathroom is these women getting harassment? Like, they're saying I'm harassing? Those kids were calling me names.
They
But I'm
followed
just
you
like,
home, didn't they?
yeah, they did. It was wild. And the kids were crouching in the back seat. I know there's a whole other story that I didn't get to type out, but it's
Dang.
just this whole language thing where it's like these words don't mean what they're saying. It's not the words that they're using is not what the words actually mean and should mean. I mean, this is why language is important. Obviously.
Well, and that's why it's being used as a weapon to
Yeah.
like numb your senses when they talk about like, I get say like, pronouns are rohypnol. I had heard that
Hmm.
recently, and it's just basically, and I get what they're saying by that. That you're just basically having your senses dulled and you're having your ability to discern
Psyop.
events like, yeah, interfered with, and
Hmm.
it's not okay. And so people just need to get a little bit more invested in being radically honest with themselves, and guess what? Don't get pissed off when people don't want to lie for you anymore. Don't get pissed off when people don't want to lie to you anymore. Um,
It's not our job. It's
mm-mm.
literally not on us.
And it's painful for me, man. I'm a victim of this as a kid. I'm a grown man now, and I don't replicate that behavior. But it's like I'm a
Of course.
grown victim of child abuse from this clique,
Yeah.
from a
Yeah. I can't
representative of these
imagine.
people. So when they come out and tell me that it's all one way or another, I'm like, you're just wrong,
Horrible.
and you don't get
Yeah.
to tell me that it didn't happen. And guess what? I get to have my opinion, and my opinion is that you people are actually experiencing something that is disorienting, and
Hmm.
it's radiating outward.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
radiating outward to other people, and we're getting caught up in a disorientation where I don't
Yes.
know who I'm talking to, who is,
I
and
know.
so I don't like being put on the back foot like that because I feel like I have a very like solid grasp of the ownership of my mind and my mental state, and I think
Yeah.
everybody should be able to like are entitled to have like a holistic grasp of your mental state being in good condition or bad condition or whatever. So, and it should be up to somebody else going, "Whoa, you're crazy because you said that," or "Whoa, that's weird. Maybe that didn't happen to you," or like that.
It's
It's
manipulation.
yeah, and it's
We
big
use a
time and
lot of
it's
those
prevalent.
tactics. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
emotional
prevalent.
manipulation is huge. I mean, this whole I think a lot of why it is working is emotional narratives that they pull on. I've seen countless articles about men dealing with, being trans and discrimination and having to work extra hard to accomplish things in life. The whole like trans misogyny thing. It's wild. It's so many articles about, men athletes that are pretending to be women. It's so like meh, suicide rate. I'm like, oh Lord, it's a very manipulative emotional tactic in their writings. Sensationalism is out of control. Bullshit. It's just like, and like I'm like half the articles that are out like that. Like, look at who wrote this newspaper company or like online press company. Who pays that company? Like, follow the fucking money. People have no time and care, and they just will recite and believe what they read on the internet.
Oh,
Just the propaganda, the news. They'll just be like, yeah, you know what I mean. Like, people don't
I do know
have the
what you mean.
ability to think critically and be like, yeah, like, why is this so aggressive since the lockdown? Like, wow, this is, they haven't been, it seems like a lot of people haven't been able to step back. I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of people also realize it's going on and they're terrified. Like, a lot of women that are standing on these podiums with men in these cycling events around the US, they're just up there smiling. I'm like, how? It's because you're going to be kicked out of what you've worked so hard to do and practice and train your body to do what you love. And if you speak and you just have an opinion of like, this is fucking unfair, you'll be like released from the team immediately. These
Mhm.
people are just being silenced on the large, and I'm like, if they can't speak, then I will be glad to speak for them, which I
Well,
feel like is what you're doing and I'm doing here.
I really appreciate that you're doing this because you had Jennifer Bilek on,
Yeah,
and
she's amazing.
she is amazing when it comes to getting the. If you need to know where the money's going, where it's coming from,
Where
Bilek
this
is
came from? Yep.
your girl. And cheers, Jen, because you're awesome, and I know you're a
Yes.
Marxist, and only place you can get any traction to speak is by going on and talking to people from the opposite sides, the political spectrum, because they're not in this dumb bubble in the middle where everybody
Yep.
has to be nice, everybody has to be liked, everybody has to like everybody else. that's not how human interactions work, man. I'm not going to like everybody else. No, not everybody's going to like me. I get it. But there's this great like bubble in the middle. And I just call them liberals because they're to my right, but it's like, and they're just engaged in this thing. So we have to skip over that bubble. And I don't really want to talk to those people anyway. but I'd rather come over and talk to you because I find you interesting. I think your art's amazing. I love your Mystique pinup. That Mystique pinup that you did, that is so cool. Yeah, I was like,
those are fun to do.
Yeah, that was cool. So, because I'm an X-Men fan, growing up, in the Autogynephilia house, I was in comic books reading X-Men all day.
Gotta escape that shit, Lord.
Yeah. So, but like, for doing this with like having Jennifer Bilek on, and I was just like, wow. So I'm like, I don't know, I just feel like I'm at a place where we're doing the right thing. You're not like, I told you like a couple weeks ago, I was like, I'm a commie and an atheist. You're like, okay.
I don't, it doesn't matter. Like these are just, that shit doesn't matter. Like these are real stories that are affecting everyone, no matter what your religious or political beliefs are. And I don't know. Did we get to discuss the thing, like where you are now thing? Like I'm just keep.
Kind of. I guess. Yeah, we did. But I just wanted to actually thank you again, just one more time.
No problem. No problem.
Thanks, and for what you're doing, and not just having me on, but just thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, but as far as like where we are now, I've basically repelled the trans sort of like attempt at capturing my daughter. Through internet and Discord servers and stuff like that. And basically she was like, talking to a lot of people, started engaging in cutting like a year ago. And it was like, I swear it was like one time or something like that. And we were just, my wife and I were on, I was like, what is going on? So we started like delving into what she was, and she was just being exposed to all of these social contagions via the internet. So that's like the main vector for this stuff. It's like totally internet based,
huge,
and reinforced. And so like where I'm at right now is basically like going full turf on the internet, because it doesn't bother me as much as I thought it would. Like basically having the social opprobrium posted at me, it was like ripping the Band-Aid off. I already hit peak trans, then they radicalized me through this like massive like gang stalking and stuff like that.
It has the opposite effect. It literally like pushes you further away from them. Yeah, it's like you really think you're going to convince people by being nasty and vicious? Like you're really failing at indoctrinating someone who could be a cult member. You know what I mean? Like what good is that doing? Like, I guess it's to guilt people or some shit, Like, yeah, I think it's a guilt thing where they want you to feel so guilty that you'll be like, oh shit, sorry, and then you kowtow and you beg for forgiveness over and over, not just once but forever.
Yeah, exactly.
And as if they wouldn't use that. And as if they would never use that over your head if you slip up and they'll go, didn't you? I'm sure they would it just doesn't work that way. But they're forgiving ever. They're not forgiving.
That's what the internet's also teaching us too. Is like to basically like your foibles are there. They're out there. So, like make of that what you will. But the thing is that like, just because a web page from 10 years ago is still up, doesn't mean that I haven't changed. And it doesn't mean that all of us aren't moving and changing or incapable of change. We are capable of change. And that is one of the things that we have to reiterate out there. Like, you can't make me hate you. Okay. And that's it. You can't make me hate you. I've already come so far full circle around that stuff where I'm, I've experienced the violence, experienced the shame and the guilt and all that stuff. And it's just like, it can't work on me anymore. So I feel good about that. But I think I needed that, almost like that weird radicalizing moment. Because, it shows who your friends are. And it shows how deep the bonds are or aren't. And, it's very clarifying. We'll put it that way.
It really builds character, and that's what I've been saying. I'm so glad you said it too, because I know I'm not the only one in this, where it's obviously they instill this fear in you where you're like, ooh, I don't know if I want to say this. And even when I was, saying little things on Facebook, and when I saw the J.K. Rowling thing that happened where she was retweeted something about, like, they said people who bleed, and she was like, what's the word? Being all like sarcastic. Wimpun? Yeah. Wimmixen or something. And I almost retweeted that and was like, but women are the ones that, have periods and I was like, delete? Because I had this sense of, she's under fire, and like, I don't want that. That was when that happened, I guess last January. I don't even know. But then I don't know, the whole pylon thing. And once that happens, and it is terrifying. It's like, what the fuck? People came out of the woodwork that I've never commented on my Facebook, insulted my art. I'm like, why is that
Yeah.
related again? Um, but it sucks. It's not fun. You're like, what? Because it's just, they make you think that you've done something horrible, and then you go to bed and you wake up and you go, I'm alive, and fuck those people because they're clearly insane. Because if you have enough awareness of who you are, that's not going to affect you. And you go, you're lying. Like, this isn't true. And so if you're able to have your, I guess, wherewithal about yourself and believe in yourself and know who you are at the end of the day, this stuff, the more you deal with it, the more, at least with me, and I'm sure with you and other people, I just gain so much like integrity, and I'm like so proud to resist it. And it has a really opposite effect of what, when they come after anyone, or at least me,
Hmm.
turf and shit. I'm like, yawn. It doesn't, I'm not like, it doesn't have that same
Hmm.
effect of like, oh my God. Or first of all, half the people are like, that, get called that, like, what the fuck does that even mean? What, dirt?
Hmm.
I'm dirt? What is that? It's so silly, this acronym world. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It's so childish, but it's just one of those things that you really do have to experience. And it's not going to be fun, but it's the fucking internet. The internet's not even real anyway. And I guess it can happen in real life too. It certainly can. Like, I mean, imagine you're in a band and they kick you out of the band or something, or you have your art displayed in a local shop, and that's, real life stuff. The internet's not real, but it is kind of real. I don't know. It's just, don't be afraid. That's what they want. It keeps you silent, and the more we stay silent about this, the more your freedoms get ripped away from you. It's already happening. Even for not just females, but everyone. It's so kind of communist. It's just wild. I don't know.
Well,
Just don't be afraid. It's such a lie. There are
well, the
people
thing
like
is,
us that I will gladly be like, come on down.
mhm.
You're an ex TRA trans right activist. That's fine. I don't care if you've seen the light. You're my friend. Like, let's go. Like, I'm not gonna be like, I'm not gonna judge you for that or anything. I'll be like, we're friends. Like, I don't have any hate.
Exactly, and it's too simple, right? It's like such a simple. Oh,
Yeah.
it's just too facile. Like, oh, you just hate people. That's preposterous. That's
Yeah.
preposterous. It's denying every experience I've ever had, and it's denying that
Yes.
I know what hate is, and that
Yeah.
So I don't go for that very much
Mm-hmm.
because it does have to do with like soldiering on through it, and you can soldier on through this. You can get hit with all of these negative stereotypes, and people can just lie about you and be like, oh, and I'm so disappointed in you, and all this stuff. And I think the part that hurts me the most was like two of my this lesbian couple friends of
Mm-hmm.
mine, and these are people who are friends, but they were friends from the music scene. But
Mm-hmm.
also a few years ago, I helped them out on a legal matter, and I got their
Mm-hmm.
case thrown out. So they were up on some stuff, and so these are people who I would consider like comrades at arms, right? People who like we
Mm-hmm.
fought the man together. We took on the town
Yeah.
or whatever, and
Yeah.
and we won. You know, and it was just from like just reaching out and having the same interests and stuff. So these people were like my friends, comrades at arms, and then to have them like also like leak my DMs, and this is a gay couple, lesbian couple, and I'm like, you are caping and like propping up a group of people who basically want to erase you,
Yep.
who think that you are being ridiculous for not wanting to have sex with men, or
Yep.
or being a bigot for not liking dick, or what,
Yep. Yep.
all of that stuff. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was like the most painful thing that I regret the most. If I could have, I would have my relationship with those two women back, because they're extremely powerful, and I know that if I got to talk to them, or if we could um,
Yeah. Yeah.
hash this out, that they would understand me better. So like for me, like where I'm at now is like I'm hoping one day to get one relationship back out of this whole thing that I've lost.
I think
And
it's
that would be
possible.
it. Yeah. And so do I, because these are intelligent people, and I think
Mm-hmm. A
getting
lot
caught
of
up
these
in that
people
whole
are a
drama,
lot.
yeah.
A lot of
But
these
we're
people are
also,
sympathetic. Yeah.
I was going to say that we're dealing with like as adversarial, um, the adversarial party. I feel like we're dealing with a lot of people who are unsure of who they are. They don't
Mm.
know, they don't have that integrity in themselves. They don't have that ability to wake up in the morning and go like, oh, that didn't happen, or that was, that's not me, or whatever. So they're malleable and protean, and like they can be changed, and so they're being forced by this other outside force to become this way, and they're going along with part of it and stuff. So it's because they're not secure. Their identity is in flux. All right. They have
Such a great
identity
point.
issues, and so
Yep.
the more certain you are about yourself, and that you're not a hater, that's good for you. you're not doubling down, you're not telling people, something that's not true. And so I like how just bold you are, and I appreciate you're not a hater, you just don't give a fuck. I'm always like,
Yeah.
listen to this woman tell my wife, like, listen to this woman is just killing it over here. So like I love that. I was like, this woman is not, and so like, we're like fans of you in our house, for that aspect. But it's because, it's because you're who you are, you're fully developed and you're certain. And that's why you can have somebody like me on your show and go like, hey dude, like we don't agree on some of this, but that doesn't even matter. Because it doesn't matter. It's really not affecting us. It's really not in play.
That's life. You're going to encounter people that don't think the same way. Is that going to make you cast them out and you call them names? It shouldn't be that way. This is what the gloriousness of like life and experience and hearing other people's stories about, oh, you're homosexual, tell me about, I want to know. Like, I want to know. It may not be my belief on, or what I believe, but I'm like, but I want to know. I have compassion for other humans. Thank you so much for those kind words. It was very sweet, making me blush over here. But cool. I don't know. I guess, did we cover everything that you would have liked to have covered?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I just I wanted just to give you a quick recommendation on something to read. Have you ever read Combat Liberalism by Mao?
No. No.
It's a short little essay about like liberal mindset and thought and why, like, what you can do to combat it in your own thoughts. Because basically, it's just he equates liberalism with sloppy thinking, incomplete thoughts, repeating mantras and not really like being critical. So if you ever read one commie thing, read the short little thing about combat liberalism, and you can kind of see where I'm coming from with like, the owning your own mind, like being able to criticize what you see in yourself and out there in other people, and when people criticize you, you can tell if the criticism's coming from that place where they're trying to better you or they're just trying to tear you down. And that's a really powerful thing to be able to distinguish, because like helpful criticism will build you up. You'll get, and it shaves off those weak points, and
it's important to withstand that and feel hurt if someone insults your expertise. Like if you're an artist or a musician, someone's like, that song sucks or whatever, and to not be like, you're an asshole. If it's like, well, why do you feel that way? Like maybe you can use it as a learning opportunity to be like, oh, I would love to hear it because maybe you'll learn something by having a conversation.
Oh, God forbid. I know, that's why like the no debate thing is so disgusting to me, because it's like, are you seriously telling me that you just give up right now?
Basically,
you can't talk about it, okay, well, then I can just don't need to listen to you, really.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Your story is so important, and I definitely know you're not alone in this, and sorry you experienced that. It's freaking terrible, but thank you so much. Your story is, again, I'm just going to keep repeating myself, but it is so important, and I really value. Thank you for spending the time and coming on and telling the world that, so.
It's my pleasure. I've been actually wanting to just talk to you and meet with you and just, so this has been really cool for me, and we'll see you around the internets.
All right, coolness. Take care then.
See you, Lizzie.
Bye. Hey, what's up? When people talk about important stuff, they always do this thing. I have important things to say. Tap, tap, tap. Now are you listening? Yes. Don't forget to hit subscribe and like this video and leave me a comment if you have any thoughts or feelings, or what do you feel about all this gender ideology and BS stuff? How is it affecting you, if it is or if it isn't? Check out my subscribestar.com/distortedlens to continue to support my work, and also support my work by donating to me on PayPal, paypal.me/LP Foster Kittens. Anyway, so see you next time, people.